The alarm screamed through the Imperial station for the third time in 6 days. Commander Vex slammed his scaled fist against the console, watching security feeds flicker across a dozen screens. Another hatchling had escaped. This one was Prince Zareth's daughter, barely 2 months old, already the size of a wolf and twice as dangerous. The nursery door hung twisted off its hinges. Scorch marks blackened the reinforced walls. 4 elite guards lay unconscious, their armor dented from tiny but devastating claws. This wasn't supposed to happen. The Dravaxian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their dragons were symbols of power, feared across 100 worlds. Yet their own royal hatchlings kept vanishing like common prey animals, and nobody could explain why. Vex activated his comm. Seal all exits. Find that hatchling before the Emperor hears about this. But the Emperor already knew. Everyone knew. The whispers had spread through the station like poison. 3 escapes in 1 week. The Imperial bloodline compromised. Enemies would see weakness. Allies would question treaties. The handlers had been the best in the Empire, trained since childhood in the ancient ways, yet they'd failed utterly. The security team found the hatchling 2 hours later in Maintenance Tunnel 7. Vex arrived expecting a fight, expecting destruction. Instead, he found silence. The team stood frozen at the tunnel entrance, weapons lowered, staring at something that made no sense. The hatchling slept curled in the lap of a human janitor. The man sat on the floor, his back against a pipe, his cleaning cart abandoned nearby. He wore the gray jumpsuit of station maintenance, his name badge reading Kyle Morrison. His hand rested gently on the hatchling's silver scales, while she breathed in soft, peaceful rhythm. Her tail wrapped loosely around his wrist. Her eyes remained closed. Vex felt his blood turn cold. Hatchlings didn't sleep around strangers. They attacked. They destroyed. This human should have been dead, torn apart the moment the infant caught his scent. Instead, she looked content. "Don't move," Vex ordered, though he wasn't sure who he was talking to. His soldiers raised their weapons, targeting the human. Kyle looked up slowly. "She's sleeping. If you could maybe lower your voices." The audacity struck Vex like a physical blow. A human, a janitor, giving orders to Dravaxian warriors. He stepped forward, his hand on his sidearm. "What have you done to her?" Kyle blinked. "Nothing. She showed up about an hour ago. Seemed tired. I let her rest. Hatchlings don't rest with strangers. What technology are you using? What device?" "Just my lap, man." She was scared. Scared. The word hung in the air like an insult. Royal dragons didn't feel fear. Vex ordered his men to seize the human, and they carefully extracted the still sleeping hatchling from his arms. She stirred, whimpering, but didn't wake. Kyle was taken to a detention cell, while scientists swarmed the tunnel, scanning for traces of sedatives, psychic manipulation, or forbidden tech. They found nothing. 2 days later, it happened again, then again the next morning. 2 more hatchlings escaped and were found with Kyle during his work shifts, sleeping peacefully against his chest or curled at his feet. The scientists scanned him 17 times. They analyzed his blood, his DNA, his brain activity. Every test came back normal, completely frustratingly human. The Emperor summoned Commander Vex to the throne room. The massive Dravaxian ruler sat in silence for a long moment, his golden eyes burning with barely contained rage. "Explain." Vex couldn't. Nobody could. The human showed no signs of deception. The hatchlings showed no signs of coercion. Yet the impossible kept happening, and the Empire's greatest minds had no answers. "Bring me the human," the Emperor commanded. Kyle stood in the throne room, still wearing his janitor's uniform, looking small and out of place among the towering Dravaxians. He didn't bow or show fear, which should have earned him execution. Instead, the Emperor leaned forward, studying him like a puzzle that refused to be solved. "What do you want from us?" the Emperor asked. Kyle shrugged. "Nothing, sir. I'm just doing my job. Your job is cleaning floors, not stealing royal hatchlings. I didn't steal anyone." "They came to me." "Why?" Kyle considered this. Maybe because I don't treat them like weapons. The room fell silent. Several advisors hissed in offense. The Emperor's claws scraped against his throne. They are the future of our empire. They must be strong. They're babies, Kyle said quietly. They're scared and confused, and nobody's comforting them. The Emperor rose to his full height, towering over the human. You dare lecture us on raising our own kind? No, sir. Just saying what I see. Back on Earth, when babies cry, we hold them. We talk soft. We let them know they're safe. Maybe your babies need that too. The words should have been blasphemy. The Dravaxian way was strength through struggle, dominance through trials. Hatchlings were placed in combat training from their first week. Gentleness was weakness. Comfort was failure. Yet the hatchlings kept running to this human who offered exactly those forbidden things. Commander Vex stepped forward. My Emperor? Perhaps we should test his claim. We have the Crimson Hatchling. Every Dravaxian in the room tensed. The Crimson Hatchling had been born 3 weeks ago to the warlord Krath. The infant was vicious beyond measure, already having killed 2 handlers and permanently injured 4 others. She was currently sedated in an isolation chamber, too dangerous to approach conscious. The Emperor's eyes gleamed. Bring her. They brought Kyle to the isolation chamber. The Crimson Hatchling thrashed against her restraints, snarling and spitting flames that scorched the reinforced glass. Her eyes burned with primal rage. Scientists monitored from behind barriers, while guards stood ready with tranquilizer cannons. Kyle was given protective armor. He refused it. You'll die, Vex warned. Maybe, but armor will scare her more. They opened the chamber door. The hatchling lunged immediately, claws extended, jaws wide. Kyle didn't run. He didn't raise his hands in defense. He simply knelt down and started humming. The melody was old, something his grandmother had sung when he was small. Simple notes, soft and repetitive. The hatchling's charge faltered. She skidded to a stop 3 feet away, confused by prey that didn't flee. Kyle kept humming. He extended one hand slowly, palm up, offering nothing but openness. The hatchling hissed. Small flames licked from her nostrils. But she didn't attack. Her head tilted, listening to the strange sound. Kyle began to whisper between the melody, words in English she couldn't understand but might feel. It's okay. You're safe. Nobody's going to hurt you. You're just scared, aren't you? That's okay too. Minutes passed. The hatchling's breathing slowed. Her flames diminished. She took 1 step forward, then another. Her nose touched Kyle's palm, hot breath washing over his skin. Then, impossibly, she pressed her scaled head against his chest and her eyes slowly closed. Within 5 minutes, she was asleep. The scientist stood in stunned silence. Vex felt something crack in his understanding of the world. The Emperor watched through the glass, his expression unreadable. When Kyle emerged, carrying the sleeping hatchling, cradling her like she weighed nothing, he found every Dravaxian staring at him with something between horror and revelation. Sylph, the Empire's leading hatchling specialist, approached with trembling hands. How? Kyle looked down at the sleeping infant. She was terrified. Everything in her world has been pain and fighting since she hatched. I just showed her something different. We have raised hatchlings for 3,000 years, Sylph said, her voice breaking. We have never seen this. Maybe that's the problem. The words hung heavy. Vex saw his fellow Dravaxians wrestling with implications that threatened their entire culture. They had built an empire on strength, on the belief that hardship forged greatness. Yet here stood a human proving that their methods had been traumatizing their own children for millennia. The Emperor descended from his observation deck. He approached Kyle directly, and the human finally showed a hint of nervousness. The ruler studied the sleeping Crimson Hatchling, then met Kyle's eyes. What would you have us do? Kyle took a breath. Let me teach your handlers. Not to replace your methods, but to add to them. Strength matters, sure, but so does knowing you're loved. Both can be true. Love is weakness. No, sir. Love is what gives you something to be strong for. The Emperor stood in silence for a long moment. Then he turned to Vex. Arrange it. This human will train new methods. Our handlers will learn. The resistance came immediately. Traditional Dravaxians saw it as shameful, a betrayal of their warrior heritage. They argued in council chambers, they protested in the streets. How could the mighty empire take lessons from a janitor of all things, from a species that had barely reached the stars? But the hatchlings didn't care about politics or pride. Over the following weeks, as Kyle taught handlers to approach with patience instead of dominance, to speak softly instead of commanding, to offer comfort instead of constant challenge, the escapes stopped. The injuries stopped. The hatchlings began to thrive in ways that confused and amazed their caretakers. Dr. Sci-Fi documented everything, her reports spreading through scientific communities across the empire. The data was undeniable. Hatchlings raised with Kyle's gentle approach alongside traditional training showed increased bonding, better emotional regulation, and actually superior combat performance when they matured, because they fought from confidence rather than fear. 3 months after the first escape, this time the human entered to find the crimson hatchling playing at the Emperor's feet, no longer vicious but playful and trusting. She saw Kyle and bounded over, chirping happily. "She asks for you every day," the Emperor said. "As do most of the others," Kyle smiled, scratching behind the hatchling's ear ridge. "They're good kids. You have changed something fundamental in our empire. Some say you've weakened us. Others say you've saved us." The Emperor paused. "I believe both are true. You've shown us that we were breaking our children while trying to forge them. That is a hard truth to accept." "Every parent gets things wrong," Kyle said. "What matters is being willing to do better." The Emperor nodded slowly. "I am offering you a position, Chief Hatchling Guardian. You would oversee the care of all Imperial hatchlings and train handlers across our worlds." Kyle looked surprised. "That's a big job for a janitor. You were never just a janitor. You were the only one brave enough to show compassion when everyone else showed force." The Emperor's voice grew heavy. "That took more courage than any battle. True strength, as you said, includes the courage to be gentle." Kyle accepted. His methods spread slowly but inevitably through the Empire. Not all Dravaxians embraced them. Many still clung to the old ways, seeing gentleness as human weakness infecting their culture. But the hatchlings knew better. They flourished, and in time, they grew into dragons who understood that protecting the vulnerable wasn't shameful, but noble. Years later, when asked about the human who changed an empire, the Crimson Dragon, now a general in the Imperial fleet, would say, "He taught us that the mightiest warriors are those strong enough to be kind. That's the most human thing of all, and the most powerful." And in Maintenance Tunnel 7, where it all began, a memorial plaque was placed. It read simply, "Here, a janitor reminded an empire what it means to care." The hatchlings still visited it, bringing flowers in their claws, remembering the human who saw them not as weapons to be forged, but as children to be loved.